Welcome to this exciting episode of Gen AI Live. My name is Brian Terry, and I'm a senior partner solution architect here at AWS, focusing on Gen AI migrations. And I'm joined here with my good friend Parajad. Parajad, how about you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Brian. And hello, everybody. My name is Parijat Avasti, and I'm also a senior partner solution architect. And I help my partners and my clients modernize their applications. And these days, they are asking a lot that how can we do the same stuff, but using, Gen AI, agentic AI, make it faster, make it more business focused, right? So what solution do you have, to solve these problems using Gen AI? And as you know, like we've got a lot of solutions.
Yeah, it's awesome. And if this is your first time joining us, we're super excited that you're here. And you can join us every Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for the latest and greatest of what AWS and its partners is doing in the Gen AI space. So, Parajad, we have an exciting episode this week. But first, let's talk a little bit about the news. What's going on in Gen AI?
Yeah, so I was reading just yesterday, I think, that last week, Strands Agent. Uh, Now, Strands Agent, who don't know, this is the AWS open source for agentic AI SDK. It just hit 1 million downloads, and it earned like 3,000 plus GitHub stars. And it's been just less than 4 months since we announced it in preview in May 2025. So we are seeing standard agents being immensely popular amongst the developer community. And on the again, I was reading another article which was so much interesting, and the title of the article was is a city in the palm of your hand, right? And it is essentially about the chips that we manufacture. It's Trainium, so Trainium, which is used to train your ML model. So it's an interactive feature or an article that walks you through different components of the Trainium chip, and your mind will be kind of blown away by seeing that the amount of stuff that gets packed into these tiny chips, right? And different components, different sections, and how are they perfectly orchestrated together to get you the best performance. And just to put things in context, a single Trainium chip can complete a trillions of calculations per second. And what does that really mean? Consider that it would take one person more than 31,700 years to count to only 1 trillion. So
Wow,
that,
that's amazing.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's super exciting, man. I mean, at the heart of power in Gen AI, we have the chip, and that's super amazing to me.
absolutely. And we have a bunch of events happening like we have announced something called as Gen AI Global Hackathon. So
Mhm.
if you have an idea, go and build those ideas. I think there is a date for that. Let me quickly find that. But if you have an idea, build your agents, submit your entry, and you'll be eligible for some fun prizes as well.
Yeah, use the new strands framework. I mean, I think that'll help go a long way with producing those ideas.
Yeah. And I think it's
Yeah,
starting from September 8 to October 20. So yeah, so I think we talked a lot about AWS 5 minutes in. Uh,
yeah.
I think trying to bring our partners in now.
It's true. But first, they need to remember this is a live show. So if you have questions, please post them. We'll try to get your questions in and we'll try to, answer them as quickly as possible because it's always exciting. And I'm sure you'll have questions with, a lot of the content. So please ask them. We would love to hear from you. So, all right. So let's bring in our first guest. Welcome to Gen AI Live. How about you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Welcome for having me. So I'm John Griffiths. I'm the field CTO at Dynatrace, and I am primarily responsible for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I work with a lot of our larger customers and obviously some of our partners as well around technical strategies. And of course, AI is nowadays quite a big part of that.
Yeah, welcome to the show. We're super excited to have you here. So, Dynatrace, a huge company, great AWS partners. Can you tell us, the community, a little bit about your company and what you guys do?
Yeah, so primarily Dynatrace is focused around observability, and actually I think I've got some slides which might help with this. But um, overall, what we focus on is the observability side of things, and that is across all of your enterprise, across everything that you do, whether that's your infrastructure observability, your application observability. Of course, in the mindset of this, the AI and LLM observability side of things, but also tying all of that together with your actual customers' experiences, with the business side of things as well, to ensure that you are understanding, as an example, your AI and return on investment you're getting from that. But with all of that, a lot of it comes down to how you manage and how we look after data at scale, and leveraging automation and again, AI within Dynatrace to help you provide those answers, help you provide the automation, help you build your performant applications to do whatever it is that you want to be doing with those.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So John, tell us more about like how does Dynatrace help the customer gain, end-to-end observability using agentic AI these days? Maybe if you shed some light on that, dive deep on that.
Yeah, so I think the end-to-end piece is probably the key part there in many ways. So because Dynatrace comes from observability and has been doing it now for quite a long time, a lot of the focus comes into, especially with this, is tracing. So tracing those transactions end to end, understanding it through the various different hops. And of course, whether you're talking about agentic AI or whether you're talking about the generative AI, it's understanding exactly, from your input to what your output is and every step in between. So understanding, all of the token usage, understanding the costs that are associated with those, and actually understanding, we carry on a little bit more, probably better here. So yeah, things like obviously the cost and performance side of things, understanding, even things like compliance and how the guardrails and safeguards are potentially impacting those applications. So again, because we are at that tracing level, we are seeing, the performance of individual sort of method calls and spans. We are seeing how it's, interacting with the various different components. And I think, again, not just the end to end of that trace, but as you may have seen as I sort of skip through here, all of the different layers of that. So obviously within the AWS side of things, obviously looking at the application layer with things like obviously Amazon Q Business and Q Developer, looking at the actual models and tools to help you build those AI applications, obviously such as Bedrock, and even down to the infrastructure layer. So with SageMaker and Trainium, as you mentioned earlier, and the GPUs and so on, because each component has an impact. Each component can go, take your AI service and application from either being really successful to not being successful, right? It is very hard and complex to manage the development of these AI applications, and therefore a good chunk of that comes into the visibility that we're trying to provide to help you get that insight into that. Whether that's, as I said, the full stack of that with all the different areas and components, all the way down to say your vector DBs and infrastructure side of things, whether that's things like your RAG pipelines and so on, or again, whether it is cost, whether it is the usage of tokens and how they're being cached and where they're being utilized and so on. So again, you can ensure that you've actually got a return on that investment of building those AI applications.
Super interesting. So, how have these agentic workloads changed from your typical web service workload and kind of monitoring and observability?
Yeah, I think over time, everything sort of evolves, right? I mean, you start with, you go back a while, you start with a lot of your monolithic applications, one giant JVM and whatnot. Started to move more into the microservices side of things with obviously things like EKS and the whole Kubernetes side of things. But I think with agentic especially, again, that's going even further. That's getting a lot more complex from an architectural perspective, because it's not just a matter of more pieces and more players and more external resources as well. Because again, reliant, as we said, on the GPU, reliant on external components and different models and so on and so forth, but also the inability per se to necessarily always know up front which route it's going to take. Of course, because of the continuous learning, the continuous insights, you never know necessarily which route it's going to take, which model it potentially is going to choose, how it's going to actually get to that answer. And I think that often becomes the, I guess, key issue a lot of time, especially from a regulatory or compliance perspective, because it's not just a matter of we gave it this input, we got this output. It's also why did we get that output? How can you explain how it got there and why it got there, rather than it had 50 options available and it chose one.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think that makes sense because prior to the Gen AI or agentic AI era or word, I would say, they were like, you always had like predefined rules. So these are some of the things, actions that anything will do, right? Any application will do. But as you rightly said, the agent, it's now thinking, it's taking it can take any, possible route. So what route it took, what was its thought process behind that chain of thought, and what actions it took. So I think it's really becomes really important to to have the ability to trace it back all the way from the origin and find out what happened, why, and more importantly why. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
Go
tell us
ahead.
so tell us about how do you solve this problem, using specifically and maybe you have some kind of use case or demo that you want to show.
Yeah, I've got a demo environment here, so let me just jump into that. Okay, so this is the whole Dynatrace platform, and I think touching on various of those pieces, I think it's important when looking at this that AI, obviously, you need that visibility. Obviously, we talked about those various different routes and how you trace and track and have that explainability of that end to end. But also, I think it's important to understand as well that most of the time, AI applications, AI services aren't siloed. They're not completely separate to everything else that goes on. If you take something more simple like a chatbot, it is still part of your website or mobile app or things like that. Obviously, if you go down the full agentic route, then again, it's going to be built into various processes within your applications and so on. And I think a lot of the time, it's important to understand that full end to end. So both the applications that are utilizing these AI services, because it may not be the issue of the AI service why the cost is increasing massively, or the response times are increasing, or whatever it may be. It may be actually how the applications are interacting with those AI services, and so understanding that full end to end is often quite key. And I think as well, the other part of that is just talking about use cases as well, is I think a lot of the time the sort of return on investment side is quite often hard for a lot of organizations to understand. And again, a lot of that ends up becoming because of that siloed view of visibility. Because of course, if you can understand your individual customers that are interacting with these AI services, and then understand what the impact about how they do X, Y, or Z on your website or mobile app or whatever it may be, did they then go and do it? Did that cause them to purchase more things through your website or whatever it may be? What is the knock-on impact of that? And therefore, you can start to see revenue increases or customer increases or whatever it may be being impacted via the utilization and the usage of the AI that's being developed. So what I have here is a quick landing page, basically within Dynatrace. As you can see, we've got the getting started pages, so we can easily get into our documentation if you wanted to have a look into that. And what you'll see is primarily with a lot of the AI side of things, we will utilize Traceloop. And what you can see here is it is as simple as basically just initializing Traceloop to get that tracing visibility in, and obviously sending it to the Dynatrace endpoint. And we will then utilize that OpenTelemetry by Traceloop in this case to get that visibility, to get some of that tracing information. And again, it can obviously be enhanced and provided with extra metadata and so on. But if I come back, obviously we touched on some of the use cases earlier, but you've got things like the service health and performance, whether that's the cost prediction, the token consumption, and so on. we've got the quality and guardrail side of things, which I think is quite interesting. As I said, a lot of the capabilities and the visibility comes from that end-to-end tracing. Of course, you can enhance some of this information with the logs and so on. But I did have an interesting conversation with a customer the other day about basically that balancing tracing versus logs when trying to get visibility into AI. And it's always the question of how do you get those logs and where do you get them from and what visibility do they actually have? Because of course, if you're pulling logs from, say, an API gateway, you can understand potentially the inputs you're let's say, delivering and potentially even the outputs that you're getting from say the generative AI, but you're not getting all of the other connections that are taking place. You're not understanding its interactions with the vector databases. You're not understanding the caching that's taking place and therefore the cost impacts of that. There's so many components and areas which actually are the direct impact to whether it's successful or not that you're missing from that. You're only getting scratching the surface in terms of the visibility that generally people will need to turn these quite often AI prototyping into production ready and successful, effectively, services that they're providing.
So these agentic workloads, I'm sure, produce quite a bit of logs. There's a lot going on between the communication between the user and it doing its activities, even if it's calling something like a Lambda function. How does Dynatrace kind of cut down the noise of all this? Because I'm assuming that all these logs it generates a ton of noise, and you're trying to figure out what the root problem is. How does Dynatrace help get to that solution and cut down the noise?
So overall, I guess there's two parts to this. Dynatrace obviously takes in a lot of that data, takes on as much data as possible in many ways, and it does try and normalize everything. It does obviously apply semantic dictionaries and so on, so that everything is, in many ways, able to be automated upon. But I think primarily one of the key parts there is that Dynatrace ourselves also have obviously AI built into the platform, which helps you create your own AI. But effectively, we have used Dynatrace's observability of AI to obviously help us build our own AI as part of that. So, I mean, if I come back up to here and I say click on problems, it won't necessarily be specific to the AI side of things. It could be anywhere in the application. But what you see here is you understand all the problems that are taking place. You understand what's being impacted. And these are without you creating alerts, creating thresholds, or whatever it may be. It's telling you when something's slowing down. It's telling you when failures are increasing. It's telling you when there's sudden drops in traffic because there's connection issues or whatever it may be. And then it's also analyzing all of that information, all of the different events and logs and everything else that's taking place to tell you exactly what the root cause component is, where it is within your stack, why it's having issues, whatever it may be. And I think importantly as well is, especially with things like generative AI can be very powerful, but it's quite often understanding how you can bring all these AI elements in context. So of course here, root cause, things like the logs in context and so on and so forth. But the other side of this as well is that we also have, as I said, the generative AI side. So assuming with all this streaming, my internet's going to hold up. Where we're effectively, obviously all this data is potentially complex and, maybe don't necessarily understand all the data, but having the ability to just hit an explain button and having effectively the natural language tell you what this problem's about, why it happened, and here's a ranked list of steps to go and remediate that. Obviously becomes very powerful, very quick and easy to do. And of course, easy to then actually automate on. If it's scaling issues, then again, you can obviously hook into AWS's Action API to try and do some auto scaling or some configuration changes or whatever it may be to do that. But again, usability, I think, is often quite key with the generative AI side, especially because even if you take something like an application owner, they may know their application really well, but if you're on, say, Kubernetes and all of that, you've then got parts that people may not understand so well. There could be Kubernetes backoff events or something like that that's taking place, and the ability to just have that explanation given to you of what it is, why it's happening, how do I fix it, is often quite key, again, to enhance people's understanding and understand, and at the end of the day, obviously remediate and fix these things a lot quicker as well, I think.
Yeah. Looks like you can also chat about the problem issue, because in the window there was a chat prompt as well. So maybe the
Yep.
application owner can chat about, what's causing this problem? How do I fix it? Something like that.
Exactly. And I think, here we have, we call the AI in Dynatrace Davis, so Davis AI. But effectively, it's technically a hypermodal AI, because it's got both obviously the generative side that we've just been sort of showing. It's got the causal AI for understanding the root cause of problems and so on. But it's also got the predictive AI, so actually being able to forecast and understand the future, the prediction of where trends are going, where metrics are going, where costs are going, and so on and so forth. But I guess the reason why it's hypermodal in that way is because each of those AI algorithms effectively can utilize the other one. So again, obviously starting down the sort of agentic sort of thinking route of that, where they can start to leverage each other to get to those accurate answers, and again try and remove obviously hallucinations in doing that. But yes, in terms of the chat side of things, yes, of course, you can then chat and again remove those war rooms. And again, obviously there are things like the troubleshooting guides in here as well, where basically when problems have been seen before, or when similar problems have been seen before, and somebody has done some troubleshooting and effectively built a bit of a guide with that, it will automatically suggest those, so that again you're not having to recreate all the steps, you're not having to redo all of the investigation. You can just effectively rerun the queries as part of that previous troubleshooting guide, and again you can have your links to your documentation and comments and whatever else as part of that to try and bring everything back in again.
Cool. So, question. So basically, do you provide some kind of agents to action upon the recommendations that Dynatrace provides, or can the user build their own agents and then hook them up with Dynatrace? And based on whatever recommendations Dynatrace generated, then the agent goes and makes those changes or fix that issue.
Yeah, so I guess in many ways, all of the above. So yes, Dynatrace has an automation engine. It has the ability to call out, as I said earlier, things like AWS Action API or the Kubernetes Action APIs to really go and do some of those actions and perform some of those remediations and things taking place. But again, it is relatively open. It can call out to whatever you want. It can call out to your agents and things like that. But on the other side, on that as well, as we do obviously have the whole MCP server side of things as well. So you can obviously utilize the MCP server to again query into Dynatrace from your own agents. So again, really effectively trying to make it as open and as flexible as possible, so it's whichever way suits you for whatever your use case is, providing the best way of doing that.
Cool.
Yeah, I love the solution. I think it's really cool how you can just tie all this information directly into your application and use Gen AI to kind of process these things. I mean, it just kind of makes it super quick and easy to kind of debug these really could be complex applications.
Indeed, and I think a lot of the time AI is making applications even more complex. Obviously that comes with a lot of benefits, but it does also add a lot of complexity. And especially the balance of what you can automate with the cost associated to that. And again, especially with the ever-growing amount of regulations and so on around that. Obviously, as you can see here, things like the PII leaks and the toxic prompts and so on and so forth. Obviously, all these things you have to stay in control of. And I think in comparison to a lot of applications in the past, where sometimes it could be quite easily built and then thrown over the fence to operations to look after, I think with the AI side of things, it is that continuous tuning, that continuous improvement, because it does need that in many ways. You do need continuous adjustments for caching to again keep the costs down. You do need continuous adjustments to make sure that you're not getting those hallucinations or whatever it may be, and you're not having PII leaks or certain content and whatever coming to fruition and whatnot. So I think that is that continuous tuning, continuous improvement that goes on. But with that, you also get more and more possibilities, I think, with what you can do with it.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question I have is like, how can enterprises use Dynatrace to accelerate innovation while also ensuring the security and compliance of the generative AI and the agentic AI workloads are taken care?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting one, because it's a nice sort of balance there of, obviously we've talked mostly about the observability side of things, and actually having that visibility, having that ability to obviously build your applications faster, understand where the costs are being spent, understand where the slowdowns are taking place, and again have that. And obviously I mentioned earlier as well, I think the key a lot of the time is that understanding what is in reality that return on investment. At the end of the day, almost every development project does end up needing a business case and proof that it does actually provide a benefit at the end of the day. And so a lot of the time it is, how do you connect that? How do you have that visibility? You've then got, I guess, the compliance side of things, I was saying before, and ensuring that you obviously stay within compliance in various different countries around the world, depending on where you're obviously running your AI platforms. And especially with, if you take the new EU regulation as such on AI, high risk applications or high risk AI services require 10 years of visibility around basically auditing of that, what the inputs were, what the outputs were, and sort of how it got there. And of course, 10 years is quite a long space of time to be storing that data. So again, you need effective and efficient ways of handling, managing, and storing that data in a way that's still accessible for those audits, still accessible for, in case something does happen and so on. And it is that understanding, that overarching balance. So I think architecture does play a key in that. And I think my final part on that one as well is, it's also about the actual security as well. So of course, you have your applications and so on as part of this, but with effectively these ephemeral processes most of the time that you get in agentic AI, they will have vulnerabilities. They will, if you're not fixing those, it is very quick for things to go wrong. Of course, when you are doing mass automation and providing that level of effectively access to do that level of automation, if you're not securing the actual agents themselves, things can go bad quite quickly if getting attacked via those. So again, obviously Dynatrace with its capabilities also does all of that security posture management of things like Kubernetes and cloud and so on, but also understanding at runtime things like the vulnerabilities and so on. Of course, with agents, it's all about runtime, because they're continuously changing, continuously updating, and as I said, ephemeral, so they are spinning up and down all the time. So you do need to ensure that you are getting that runtime visibility into everything that's going on.
Exactly.
Awesome. So we only have like a few more minutes left in this interview. Can you tell our audience where they can find out more information about your solution, or even if you want to plug some socials?
Okay. So here's some quick QR codes. So again, various different ones here. A few blogs, Dynatrace Hub, and of course the AWS Partner Network blog as well around Dynatrace. But I think one of the things I would say as well is, of course, as you'd expect, Dynatrace is at AWS reInvent, and we do have a booth there, as you can see, 545. So please do come over and visit, because I'm sure most of you will be at reInvent. But also, we do have a couple of customer workshops going on as well. So we do have Dynatrace is going on stage with Ally Financial, and also, myself, I'll be on stage with CDL, which is an insurance solution provider based out of the UK. So, I will be there as well. So again, do come along and say hello.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, and you're welcome to come back at any point if you have other innovations around the solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, John.
All right, audience, we'll be right back. Welcome back to this exciting episode of Gen AI Live. My name is Brian Terry, and I'm a senior partner solution architect here at AWS, focusing on Gen AI migrations. And I'm joined here with my good friend Parajad. Parajad, how about you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Brian, and hello, everyone. My name is Parijat Avasthi. I'm a senior partner solution architect as well at AWS, and I help my partners, my clients, to modernize either their applications or build offerings around modernization. And these days, heavily infused with GenAI, the solutions that we offer to our clients.
All right. We're super excited to have you here. If this is your first time joining us, we're super excited. And for everyone, you can join us every Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. to hear about the latest and greatest in Gen AI space with AWS and its partners. So, Parajab, we just had an exciting guest with Dynatrace, and they showed us a little bit about their solution around observability for agentic workloads. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think I feel that everybody's so much focused about building agents all around, right? And in this world where we are starting to see more and more agents getting built and deployed in the infrastructure, if you will, I think it's really important to have some kind of observability solution that shows you what's going wrong. What's is anything going wrong? If yes, then where it's going wrong, what's going wrong, and what kind of actions that can be taken. And the speed is of importance, right? And the precision of finding out what's the root cause of that. So I think it was really an interesting discussion.
Yeah, super excited. I learned a lot, especially about their platform and how it's kind of evolved since the days I've used it. In my own past, I was a lonely DevOps engineers, and we didn't have agentic workloads. But I'm glad to see that that tooling is evolving, such as DevOps engineers can take those same methodologies and what they were doing around these non-agentic workloads to kind of include these agentic workloads. So I think it's a great thing what they're doing, and a very innovative solution.
Absolutely, and I think analytics is a very very useful use case that is being solved using GenAI. Obviously, it has been has always been solved using some
Mhm.
kind of AI solution, but GenAI is kind of making it more accessible to use and deploy, and also finding the relevant information out of all the data that we have, right? So speaking of analytics, so I think is it time to bringing in our next guest?
Why not? Let's bring in our next guest. Welcome to Gen AI Live. We're super excited that you're on the show. How about you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm David Drummond. I'm a principal data scientist here at Fractal Analytics. Um, and my expertise is in generative AI. I actually studied it in university. And I'm super excited to be talking about Gen AI and agentic AI with you guys today.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you on the show. How about you tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, Fractal Analytics is a 25-year-old analytics company. We've been doing what's considered advanced analytics for that whole time. And of course, what AI and advanced analytics means has transformed over those 25 years. But ultimately, our goal has been always to empower human decisions through AI, data, and analytics.
Oh,
Nice.
interesting.
Yeah. And since you are studying in this, in this domain, so tell us more about what differentiates agentic AI than the traditional AI, and why this shift is now even more critical for the enterprises to adopt.
Yeah, agentic AI obviously is a buzzword, a hype word, and but I think it's trying to communicate a very important idea, which is can we have AI making actions in the enterprise, right? And so where AI, ML, analytics was primarily about insights and having a person uh, at the end making a decision, agentic AI is about having the AI make that decision for you, um, given particular guardrails and so forth. So that's how I distinguish it. Obviously, there are many, many definitions for agents, and it's important when we have those conversations about, what we mean. We're going to bring an agent here to actually come to an understanding of what we really mean when we say agentic AI.
Absolutely. And I think you're spot on when you said that AI makes those recommendations, if you will. Obviously, it will, you can automate it. But when you bring through agentic AI into the mix, then you're really talking about, having something to action upon those recommendations. And of course, the agent has to work with the wide variety of other services, like it should have memory for retaining the context and so on. But I think at a very high level, agent is something who is been given a task. Now go ahead and do it. Now agent is doing it.
A- a- Absolutely. And to respond to that sort of second question, it was like, why is it important for
Yeah.
enterprise? I feel that um, part of the AI adoption problem in the past has been business users seeing these really cool things that we're doing and asking the question, so what, right? What can I actually get out of this? With agentic AI, we can make a very compelling use case and say, look, we're able to increase productivity, twofold, threefold. I'm sure the developers on this call have been using the various coding assistants and seeing the productivity gains in your own workflows. If we can bring those same sort of workflows to business to enterprise, that's really how they get excited about AI and specifically agentic AI.
Okay. You touched a little bit about the coding agents. Can you talk a little bit about other use cases where you see agents becoming very useful in enterprise?
Absolutely. So one of the interesting things, so I've been working a lot with life science companies recently, and life sciences companies have been historically really slow to adopt AI. This is primarily because there's a lot of risk involved, right? They want to make sure that they're not using it to discriminate. That they have to make sure everything's compliant. But it turns out that those same things that made it hard for them to adopt traditional AI makes it them particularly accessible for adopting agentic AI. They have these real needs to ensure compliance across their value chain. And they're bringing in generative AI, agentic AI to solve some of these problems. I'll give you a few examples here. Um, Medical legal regulatory review is something that all pharma companies do, and to ensure that the promotional material, the other educational material that they produce is actually truthful, right? And there's a lot of things that go into this. But the cost, the time that's spent to actually review that material is very, very long, and rightfully so. But a lot of the issues that humans end up reviewing or correcting are problems that ideally should have not been made in the first place. Spelling errors, punctuation errors, something that a word processor could have gotten. But then if you take a step further, there are things cut and dry. Like you have to include the safety profile in that in the whatever material you produce. And so I'll give you an example of this that we have that's been affecting my life personally. Actually, there's a drug out there, bupropion, and there, obviously it has a product label, as all do. And then there's another drug. Delsum is the brand name. There's a generic name that I can't remember at this point. But on the product label, uh, they don't mention any sort of interactions, right? This is just the reality of it. But recently, one of my loved ones had a what we call an adverse event, which they saw basically uh, these drugs interacting in a negative way. And so imagine if you're one of these companies that produces these drugs and you recognize this adverse event. And now you want to go and correct all of your materials, right? That's a lot of work. Millions of dollars that it would take to actually go and correct that material. We've developed solutions to actually look at the material, identify whether it's about drug interactions, and then if it is, update it with the explicit instructions to not interact these drugs together.
Wow,
Wow.
that's a very powerful use case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in fact, the demo I was going to show, we're having technical issues today. I apologize for that. The demo I was going to show today was exactly this, showing like, hey, here is an old slide that you would have brought to a doctor. These sales reps would have brought to a doctor. And then what we wanted to be is the updated slide that shows that drug interaction. And having that powerful tool to go in and correct it.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, I'm imagining doctors using it for themselves. Obviously, they will know what the
Yeah,
interactions are, but I mean, anybody can use it. Like that, if I take this and if I'm already on medications, right? These are the medications that I'm already on. And if I take this new medicine, what kind of interactions can it have, right? I don't really have to go and look it up on the internet. So this tool does that job for me. That's,
it,
yeah,
it,
that's,
exactly. And there's just so much material that has to be corrected based on that update. And that's the goal, right? Is we want to make sure that all material that these pharma companies come out with is truthful and is able to produce um, safe uh, safe use by their patients.
That's super cool. I imagine to do that kind of work, Fractal kind of makes it easy, right? I mean, to be able to change documents or do this at massive scale. Can you talk a little bit about how Fractal makes this an easy process for its customers?
Absolutely. So one of the coolest things about agentic AI is the ability to describe things like an actual process, right? To say, hey, I know that um, you need to follow step A, B, and C. We call this uh, the process of turning that ABC into an agentic process automation. And so what we generally do is we map the current process out. We write down the steps that you guys are doing, and then at each step identify, hey, is this a place where we can clearly define the rules? Um, or is it a place where a human needs to take a call? Or is it a place where maybe just robotic process automation can take place? And once you have identified that for each step, that's when you can actually start to automate, right? And so the tool that we have, Cogentic agentic process automation, allows you to map those workflows into agents um, using plain text as well as the simple workflow.
Wow.
yeah. And I think you touched upon a really important point that we really need to, do a assessment of what's good if it remains like rule-based process versus bringing in the foundation models into the mix, right? And I always take the example of, if you want to do some kind of calculation, right, you just can probably use a calculator function, right? 2 plus 2 is 4. You don't really have to go and ask a Gen AI model that 2 plus 2 is what? 4, right? So I think that's really important that, setting up the process or fine tuning the process before bringing in Gen AI and agentic AI into the mix. I think that's really important for the success of the anything that we are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and if I can just say, I think AWS and Bedrock guardrails is at the
Yeah,
forefront of this sort of question, which is, can we ensure that wherever we are on that journey, that we are that the decisions made by AI or not by AI are correct. Just this last year at reInvent, you guys announced part of guardrails that allows for a mathematical verification of the
Yes.
truthfulness of an output. And that sort of instruction is so critical when it comes to agentic process automation.
Yeah, you're talking about automated reasoning. It's one of my
Exactly.
favorite
Yeah,
things. I love it.
Yeah.
Researching that, I love automated reasoning. I think it's the future of Gen AI.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I mean it. You can be assured that the output that you're getting from GenAI or Bedrock, it's reliable because of the automated reason. It's been mathematically
Mhm.
verified. There is lesser chance of hallucination. Yeah.
Yeah, it reduces it by, I think, what, 90%. So it's
Wow.
a very effective tool in preventing hallucinations. So I'm super excited that you mentioned that and you guys are on top of it.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I want to quickly talk about, there's this new thing that's going on as vibe coding, right? Or low
Mhm.
code. So how, what role does, low code or even no code plays in democratizing the AI adoption across industries or the business teams? What are you seeing?
Absolutely. So when it comes to no code applications, obviously this is a governance problem that you have to solve, because the last thing you want is for shadow IT to crop up and having uh, ungoverned, undisciplined deployment of things. However, there is a productivity gain that happens when we actually democratize the tools of building. The internal entrepreneurs are able to create products that are meaningful for the business. And so one of the things that we do with agentic process automation is sort of that no code mapping of processes. Of course, you can have someone like Fractal come in and guide you on that journey. But within our APA tool set, we have nodes, and you can connect those nodes together and actually declare in plain English what you want to accomplish. Now, then you have the front end problem, right? And that's where I think there's still going to be a requirement for someone that actually knows how to do TypeScript or whatever that framework is, in order to make sure that it's compliant. We've seen a lot of issues out in the world today about people deploying vibe coded applications that are have serious uh, security issues because they didn't take the time to have it reviewed or have those things vetted. So code us coders are living it up, right? We're able to have these amazing tools, but ultimately it's our responsibility to use them appropriately.
That is
Yeah, that,
awesome.
yeah. And you said that's Cogentic, right? That's the name of the APA tool, agentic process
Yes,
automation. Okay,
that's
and
exactly right.
so it helps the customers or developer, whoever is using it, in the right direction, follow the right standards, frameworks, in order to develop that workflow that they are trying to build.
Exactly. And what's really cool about it is that once one person uses it to develop an agent, a tool, a process, it gets registered to a marketplace. And within this marketplace, other people within the organization are able to see it and say, like,
Nice.
oh, this could solve my same problem. And, uh, and going back to my example of the medical legal regulatory review, this actually came out of another solution where people were trying to just tag materials, adding metadata to materials, and somebody else said, "Oh, wait a second, this could apply to this other novel problem. Why don't we just transfer it, make a few tweaks, and then deploy it for this other use case?"
Nice. No, that's interesting. And when you say marketplace, I'm assuming it's like an internal marketplace, or are you talking about
Exactly.
AWS market? Okay.
Within an internal marketplace, yeah. So you're talking about like, hey, we deployed Cogentic for you, and then you have a registry, if you will, of these agents that people have made inside of your company.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Like, the workflow has been developed, and obviously there will be some repeatability to it. And if somebody wants to develop something similar to that, they can download it and use it, and maybe do some little bit of customization and ready to go.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And speaking of marketplace, so is Cogentic available on marketplace, or how, if somebody wants to use it, if the customers they want to use it, how do they get started?
Yes. The first step is to oh yeah, it actually just dropped in the chat here. We have a link to the marketplace where people can go to get started there.
Oh yeah, cool.
Awesome. Man, awesome solution. I imagine it's this is just super awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that we couldn't include the demo. So, but for our audience, does Fractal provide any kind of other demos that they can go to or trials? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I recommend people go to fractal.ai. We have some pretty incredible materials up on there to see about all the neat work that we're doing, both in developing things in our research arm as well as for clients, including Cogentic. Um, I will. One of the things that I will highlight in that is we have some open source material that we've developed, including uh, Vidia.ai. Again, all of these links are available on fractal.ai, as well as Marshall Goldsmith AI. If you're familiar with Marshall Goldsmith, he's a very famous executive coach. We worked with them to develop a AI version of him, and it basically explains just like Marshall would. In fact, when I met him, he's like, "This is even better than I am at giving executive coaching." So, very cool stuff. Definitely check it out. Totally free.
Awesome.
Awesome. So what do you see is next for the agentic AI, and how do you, based on your work with your customers, so how do you see the enterprises evolving their AI strategy over the next 12 to 18 months?
That is the most critical question. And let me first talk about security, because right now there are many different models on how people deploy agents. Uh, but as we're moving into a governed AI solution, you have to think about what access does this AI have? What actions can it take? And who's responsible for those actions? And so as we're moving into the future, um, I believe more and more frameworks will come out for how you actually govern the actions made by AI. In fact, I saw just yesterday one such framework came out that open standard for how to deal with money and agents. So these sort of things are going to continue to come out. Actually, making decisions that are aligned to human desires and human flourishing, uh, and ultimately, what's going to happen is enterprise choosing to um, restrict agents in order to deploy and restrict agents in order to keep agentic use safe, right? So we call it, zero trust, role-based access control sort of agent use cases.
Yep,
Wow.
I agree. And I think from AWS side also we provide, the necessary frameworks, things like agent core, so which ensure that the agents are now ready to be deployed in a production scale environment, but at the same time also ensuring that those securities and the governance compliance requirements are met, so agent operates within the confines of what it's supposed to do.
I'm so glad you came up it brought up Agent Core. I just got access to it a few days ago, and it really is amazing in that regard. Like being able to control the APIs the agents have, and while still using the frameworks that that you are used to and love, having the correct memory in place and all of those things. Yeah, absolutely brilliant work from AWS there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And amazing work from our partners like yourself as well, like who are coming onto the shows and then walking us through with these amazing use cases. I really love this use case about this the medication that you talked about. uh, yeah, so it's like with the this is what I've always think about, like uh, ever since Gen AI or agentic AI happened, like people are thinking about more and more use cases, what are the different problems that they can solve, because with the use away with the advent of these technologies, it's more easier than ever to to build a solution to solve that particular use case.
Absolutely, and I think that's just going to continue.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we only have a few minutes left in this interview. Can you tell the audience where they can find out more information about Fractal? And we'll also give you an opportunity if you want to drop some socials if they want to get in touch with you personally.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a couple things that I'll call out there. So obviously I've talked about Fractal AI. My LinkedIn is here. We'll share that after the show. Feel free to connect with me there. I'm also working on an open source project. My GitHub we'll have in the show notes as well. Polar Llama, which allows you to scale the inference of LLMs. And yeah, looking forward to hearing what you guys think about Fractal and Cogentic.
All right, you hear that, audience? Jump on his LinkedIn, connect with him. I have, so yeah, you can do the same. So yeah, thank you
Awesome.
so much, David, for being here. I mean, your insight into this your awesome application has been awesome, and I actually learned a lot. Parajon, what did you think? Did you learn a lot?
Learned a lot, and personally speaking, I am kind of excited about if I can get my hands on this Cogentic. uh, I have some workflows automations in my mind. I just want to see if I can try to automate them using Cogentic. Yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah,
super exciting.
that was really cool.
All right. So yeah, definitely we'd love to have you back at another time and point when you actually have other things to show or if you've innovated further. So yeah, please come back someday and talk to us more about the Fractal solution.
Absolutely. Next time, I hope my internet works better, so so I can actually do that those shows. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been another exciting episode of Gen AI Live. Thank you, audience, for being here. You can join us every Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. My name is Brian Terry, and this is Parajon, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.